going more into like mariachi history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since we started talking about that, so there's mariachi tapatio de Jose Marmolejo and mariachi, or not even mariachi, but the cuarteto cuculense, right? What
Mm-hmm.
other like were they were obviously not like the first groups, but were they the first recorded groups in
Well, Cuarteto
mariachi?
Cuculense was the first recorded mariachi, right?
Yeah.
And then later, about 20 years later, or well, less than like 15 years later, then you have Mariachi Coculense and Mariachi Tapatio that had gone to Mexico City. And so then they start recording, right? And this is kind of like, from that Plaza Garibaldi and El Tenampa, like, like they start to become like a centralized location for mariachis. So there were about five mariachi groups that ended up going to Mexico City and really making a name for themselves. But I think the one that had the biggest following, or was the most famous, or most well liked, was mariachi. Ended up being Mariachi Tapatio, and then of course Mariachi Vargas comes along, and I mean, I think they had a certain amount of luck because they were invited to play for Lázaro Cárdenas's birthday, and eventually became the official mariachi of the Mexico City Police Department, and of course found their way to XCW. Silvestre Vargas was a really like relentless worker, and so he was constantly on the lookout for work opportunities for Mariachi Vargas. And I think that just his relentless push to find work opportunities, I mean, of course, benefited the group to getting better, right? Because if you're working more, you're going to become better just by playing so much, right? But
Yeah.
it was also the pressure to be better, because yeah, if you are going to have a position for a daily radio show, or three times a week or whatever it was, you have to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mariachi Vargas just kind of took over, and then of course really set the standard. And I think obviously, like, somebody instrumental in that was Miguel Martinez. Mariachi Vargas was not the first group to have a trumpet, and Silvestre Vargas didn't want to add a trumpet, but it was by public demand that they just had to go with it, right?
Yeah.
And of course they couldn't have picked a better person for that role, because Don Miguel just really solidified, and I mean, just created and solidified how the mariachi should, I mean, how the trumpet should sound in the mariachi, right?
And by that time, they had already been playing, or like Mariachi Vargas was a mariachi already for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Since like like late 1800s.
Yeah, about 1897, 1898. Mm-hmm. Is Mariachi Vargas's birth date,
Yeah.
birth year.
Okay, so going back to, I guess, history, right? So there's some articles that have been floating around that there's the distinction between mariachi nuevo and then a mariachi tradicional,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of differentiating it between the addition of a trumpet and then the addition, or oops, or like no trumpet. Would you have anything to add to that as far as like that information?
Well, I haven't studied the mariachi tradicional extensively, so I don't really know too much about its history. I'm sure that you could find that like in the Jesus Jauregui book,
Hmm.
El Mariachi. Do you have that book?
No, but I'll definitely look into getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good resource. It's like this thick. But Jesus Jauregui is an anthropologist, and
Mm.
he spent, I don't know, like 20 some years doing his research on the mariachi, and he has some really great pictures in that book. Actually, let me see if I can. I think I have it in here so you can see it. So this is the book,
Oh, cool.
and like, it's really cool. Like, he decided to put different business cards. It's like the opening page, but I'll just so he has an introduction, and then he goes over a little bit of like general Mexican history, so that you can contextualize the history of the mariachi, the origin, It's all in Spanish, but características del mariachi tradicional, el mariachi en la actualidad, las transformaciones del mariachi Vargas de Tecalitlán durante el siglo XX, and de México para el mundo. So like this is a really, really good book. Like I said, it has a lot of really cool pictures. Like here's one. See, like album covers, and then like, oh yeah, look at this is cool. Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh wow.
Gato
The double
Lolo.
bass.
Yeah.
Like the origin for the guitarrón was because it was like the double bass was just too big to carry around, right?
Yeah, well, I mean
Initially.
the mariachi, like it either used the harp or the guitarrón. Yeah, eventually the harp was phased out because it just wasn't very portable. But yeah, like I mean, this gives like the history. It says la mayoría de los mexicanos, incluso los del occidente del país, entiende por mariachi el estilo, el repertorio y la imagen del grupo musical emanado de los ámbitos citadinos y modelado por los medios de comunicación masiva. Por lo general se desconoce que en algunas zonas rurales apartadas y en medios urbanos marginales ha perdurado el mariachi original como una tradición interrumpida, oh my gosh, que se reproduce con su dinámica peculiar en ambientes comunitarios, regionales y de barrio. Yeah, so I mean there are regions where this kind of conjunto still exists, and you can see like here's some other pictures. Here's this one,
Wow.
and
Because I know some of it developed into the conjunto de arpa grande, and then there's the all those grupo jarochos.
yeah, so you can see this here, like arpa grande. Well, jarocho is like from the Veracruz region.
Yeah.
And like arpa grande is from Michoacan.
Mm.
So lower lands, yeah, like there is definitely like a difference between what we consider the modern mariachi, which was, I mean, a result of urbanization, right? Like it's no longer a rural ensemble. And of course, with Mariachi Vargas kind of leading the way to that modernization, well, everyone else is copying that, right?
Yeah. And
And
because
so,
were they the first ones that started implementing like the mariachi traje? Because even like I think Mariachi Tapatio and not Mariachi Coculense, like they still didn't have trajes at that point, did they?
yeah, I mean, and that was a result. I mean, I don't know who the first group was to use the traje de charro, but that was also a result of like, hey, let's spruce this thing up, because obviously, like, if you're some dignitario of the de la ciudad or del gobierno or whatever, like you're inviting this group to play for your birthday or your mom's birthday or whatever, you don't want people to show up in calzones de manta and huaraches, right? Like, let's spruce this up a little bit, right? So I mean, yeah, that is a direct result of the mariachi going to the city and presenting like a more cosmopolitan or more like a fancier thing. Like, I mean, you know, like los hacenderos, like those were like the rich people, right?
Yeah.
And so that's their uniforme de gala, right? The traje de charro. You know, I guess it was befitting of like how do we show something that's still very symbolic of Mexicanos, of Mexico, like the
Mm-hmm.
traditional dress, but also like fancy, elegant, right?